The meditation chamber fell silent as Commander Zeph Carey of the Galactic Defense Coalition settled into the speaking circle. His forearms folded across his chest in the traditional manner of his people, the Veltar. The younger officers gathered around him, their various species creating a rainbow of colors and forms in the dim light. Some had wings, others had scales, and a few possessed the crystalline features of the outer rim worlds. "You want to know about humans," Zeph Carey said, his voice carrying the weight of 3 centuries of military service. "You think you understand warfare because you've read the tactical manuals and studied the battle simulations. But you have never faced them in actual combat. You have never seen what they are truly capable of when their survival depends on it." Lieutenant Kixera, a young Zephyrian with pale blue skin and large black eyes, raised one of her 6 tentacle arms. "Commander, the humans only joined the coalition 50 years ago. They're barely past their atomic age. How dangerous could they really be?" A sound escaped from Zeph Carey's throat that his translator couldn't quite process. It might have been laughter, but it carried no humor. "That question tells me everything I need to know about how little you understand. Sit back, all of you. Let me tell you about the Battle of Kepler 442b, and why the Galactic Council now requires a unanimous vote before any species can declare war on humanity." The chamber's lights dimmed further as Zeph Carey activated the holographic display. Stars appeared around them, showing a tactical map from nearly 2 centuries ago. This was during the Third Expansion War. The hegemony had been pushing into human space for 6 months. "We thought we were helping a primitive species defend itself from a superior force. The hegemony had plasma cannons, energy shields, and ships that could travel between stars in days. Humans had chemical rockets, metal projectiles, and computers that took up entire buildings. On paper, it wasn't even a contest. The hegemony had conquered 47 different species. Some surrendered immediately when they saw the overwhelming technology gap. Others fought bravely but were crushed within weeks. We expected the humans to fall somewhere in between. We were catastrophically wrong." A young Thoraxian officer, his reptilian features skeptical, interjected, "But, Commander, how could such a primitive species pose any real threat? Our historical records show that humans hadn't even achieved faster-than-light travel at that time." Zeph Carey's primary eyes focused on the speaker while his secondary eyes continued to scan the group. "You're thinking like a civilized being, Cadet Mordun. That was our first mistake. We assumed that humans would fight like us, with honor and according to established military doctrine. We thought they would meet us in open battle, fleet against fleet, following the recognized rules of engagement that every spacefaring species had adopted." The holographic display shifted, showing a human colony world. It looked peaceful from orbit, with cities that gleamed in the sunlight and vast agricultural areas that fed millions. Kepler 442b was one of humanity's outer colonies. Population, 4.7 million. It had basic defensive satellites and a small garrison of human marines. When the hegemony fleet arrived, they demanded immediate surrender. Standard protocol was to give the defenders 24 hours to consider their options. The humans sent back a single-word response, "No." Zeph Carey manipulated the display to show the hegemony fleet, massive ships bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Supreme Commander Vashtok of the hegemony was not concerned. He had 8 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a moon. He had been personally responsible for conquering 12 different worlds. He expected this to be his easiest victory. The bombardment began at dawn, local time. Precision strikes against military targets, designed to force a surrender without excessive civilian casualties. The hegemony, despite their reputation, followed the galactic conventions regarding civilian protection. They targeted the orbital defense platforms, the military bases, and the communication centers. The display showed explosions blooming across the planet's surface as the hegemony fleet struck from orbit. Within 6 hours, all major human military installations had been neutralized. The planetary defense grid was offline. The human fleet had been destroyed before it could even launch. By every conventional measure, the battle was over. Lieutenant Kixera leaned forward, her tentacles writhing with nervous energy. But it wasn't over, was it? Not even close, Zethkari confirmed. Supreme Commander Vashtok sent down landing craft with occupation forces. Standard procedure was to secure key population centers, establish a provisional government, and begin the integration process. The hegemony had done this successfully dozens of times before. The first landing craft touched down outside the capital city of New Geneva. 200 hegemony warriors disembarked, expecting to find a demoralized population ready to surrender. Instead, they found an empty city. Not abandoned, empty. Every civilian had vanished. Every human was gone. The holographic display showed the eerily quiet streets of New Geneva, with hegemony forces moving cautiously through empty buildings. At first, the hegemony thought the humans had fled. Running away was a common response from conquered species. But, as they investigated further, they found something much more disturbing. The humans hadn't run. They had gone underground. Literally. The entire city was sitting on top of a massive tunnel network. Miles of passages, supply caches, and hidden chambers that had been carved out of the bedrock. The hegemony scanners had missed it completely because the humans had used primitive but effective techniques to mask their energy signatures. Cadet Mordun's reptilian eyes narrowed. A tunnel system? What could they possibly accomplish with such crude tactics? Zethkari's expression grew darker. You're still thinking conventionally. You're imagining humans hiding in holes, waiting for the war to end. That's not what happened. The humans weren't hiding. They were hunting. The display shifted to show the underground network in cross-section. It was vast and complex, with multiple levels and interconnected chambers. The first indication that something was wrong came when hegemony patrols started disappearing. Not killed in battle, simply gone. A patrol would enter a building, and they would never come out. No distress signals, no energy weapon discharge, no evidence of struggle. Supreme Commander Vashtok ordered larger patrols. Same result. He deployed sensors to monitor all movement in the city. The humans somehow avoided or disabled every sensor they encountered. He set up checkpoints at key intersections. The checkpoints would be found abandoned, with no sign of the guards. Lieutenant Kixera's skin had shifted to a pale yellow, indicating stress. How were the humans killing hegemony warriors without weapons? Who said they didn't have weapons? Zethkari asked. Remember, we were thinking of humans as primitive. We expected them to fight with the technology we knew they possessed. We were looking for plasma rifles and energy shields. We weren't prepared for what they actually brought to the battle. The display showed a reconstruction of one of the underground chambers. It was filled with human soldiers, but they didn't look like any military force the assembled officers had ever seen. Instead of gleaming armor and energy weapons, they wore simple camouflaged clothing and carried what appeared to be crude metal devices. The humans called them guerrilla fighters. They had taken every civilian in the city and turned them into soldiers. Not just the military-age males, as most species would do. Everyone. The elderly, the young, males and females, even adolescents. 4.7 million people had become a single military unit with one objective: make the occupation so costly that the hegemony would withdraw. They didn't try to win battles in the conventional sense. Instead, they made every day, every hour, every minute a nightmare for the occupying forces. A hegemony soldier couldn't eat a meal without wondering if it had been poisoned. They couldn't sleep without thinking about the explosive device that might detonate beneath their barracks. They couldn't walk down a street without knowing that any window, any doorway, any pile of rubble might hide a human with a chemical projectile weapon. The display showed a series of small engagements, each one brief and devastating for the hegemony forces. The humans had studied every successful insurgency in their species' history. They knew that they couldn't match the hegemony's technology, so they didn't try. Instead, they made technology irrelevant. A plasma rifle is useless if you don't know where your enemy is. Energy shields don't help if the attack comes from below, through tunnels you didn't know existed. But the humans didn't just rely on stealth and surprise. They adapted captured hegemony equipment with a speed that defied explanation. Within days, they had figured out how to turn hegemony medical scanners into improvised explosive devices. They converted communication equipment into jammers that could disable entire sectors of the hegemony command network. Cadet Mordun looked confused. How could such a primitive species understand our technology so quickly? Zeph Carey's laugh was genuinely amused this time. That question reveals another fundamental misunderstanding about humans. You're assuming that technological sophistication equals intelligence. Humans might not have had plasma rifles, but they had something far more dangerous: adaptability. Every other species in the galaxy develops along predictable lines. We master energy, then space travel, then advanced materials, then artificial intelligence. It's a logical progression that takes thousands of years. Humans compressed that entire development cycle into a few centuries, and they did it while fighting each other. The holographic display shifted to show human history, compressed into a few brief minutes. Wars, inventions, disasters, and discoveries flashed by in rapid succession. While we were slowly perfecting our energy weapons over millennia, humans invented gunpowder, cannons, rifles, machine guns, tanks, aircraft, rockets, and nuclear weapons in the span of a few hundred years. They had to innovate constantly because they were always fighting someone. More importantly, they learned to fight with whatever they could find. A human soldier could pick up an enemy weapon they'd never seen before and figure out how to use it within minutes. They could take civilian equipment and turn it into military hardware. They could see tactical possibilities that never occurred to any other species. Lieutenant Kick's era was now a pale green color. What happened to the hegemony force? Supreme Commander Vashtok called for reinforcements after the first week. His initial force of 200 had been reduced to fewer than 50, and those remaining were in no condition to continue fighting. The reinforcements arrived and suffered the same fate. More reinforcements arrived, and the pattern repeated. After 6 months, the hegemony had committed 3 entire battle fleets to what should have been a simple occupation mission. They had lost over 50,000 warriors to a primitive species that shouldn't have been able to threaten a single hegemony scout ship. The economic cost of the occupation exceeded the value of the entire planet. The display showed the state of New Geneva after those 6 months. The city was a maze of destroyed buildings, improvised fortifications, and hidden tunnels. But here's what truly terrified the hegemony leadership. The humans weren't getting weaker. They were getting stronger. Every week they faced the occupation, they became more skilled, more organized, and more dangerous. They had started by using captured weapons and improvised explosives. By the end, they were manufacturing their own advanced equipment using salvaged materials and insights they had gained from studying captured hegemony technology. They had gone from throwing rocks to building energy weapons in 6 months. Zeph Carey paused to let this information sink in. Several of the younger officers looked distinctly uncomfortable. The hegemony had a choice. They could commit their entire military to subduing one human colony world, or they could withdraw and find easier targets. They chose to withdraw. But the humans weren't finished. The moment the hegemony fleet left orbit, human ships began appearing throughout hegemony space. Not military vessels, civilian craft that had been converted into weapons platforms. Cargo ships carrying improvised missiles. Passenger liners filled with explosive devices. Even individual humans in spacesuits with nothing but small chemical rockets and pure determination. The holographic display showed chaos throughout hegemony territory as human raiders struck at targets throughout their empire. The humans had learned something from their underground war on Kepler 442b. They didn't need to win conventional